Hey everyone, and welcome back to So You Say You're Married. And today I am excited to introduce you to some very special guests. This is Nik and Adinah Johnson, both of which are marriage coaches as a huge power couple together. And I have been following them on YouTube, and they give some wonderful advice as well as have an amazing background together. So I'm going to turn it over to Nik and Adinah to give them a proper introduction of themselves and tell you a little bit more about their background, where they come from, and why they're here.
Great. Thank you. You want to open the stuff on?
I'm gonna let you do it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kodi. We appreciate it. As you said, this is my beautiful wife, Adinah. I am Nik Johnson. We have been married for 21 years. Wow. 21 years. Yeah. So 21 years.
Congratulations, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. 21 years. And we are marriage coaches. We've been marriage coaches now for probably around 18 years.
Yeah.
18 years. And really what we decided to do and how we came to be marriage coaches was that we realized that we loved each other, but we didn't know how to be happily married. And so really we started off going into coaching ourselves, going and trying to get tools so we could relate to each other better. And then through those efforts and trying to learn how to coexist and be happily married, not just married, we really realized that, you know what, it's not as hard as people make it, but it's sure not easy. And if you're willing to put the work in, you can really have a happy marriage. So we kind of went there and started to get, training and certifications, and I guess kind of getting to the other side of the couch or the sofa where actually, helped out couples. And that brings us here. So we're really thankful to that. We're in the Jacksonville, Florida area. And really, we just have a passion on individuals being getting the most that they can out of their marriage.
Yeah, and being marriage coaches, once we got involved as far as helping our relationship, because I've been a psychology professor about as long as we've been marriage coaches, and I was a youth counselor prior to that. So all of the psychology of it, I just soaked it up. I just really was interested in it. So then when we got opportunity to help get certified and help other people, in fact, our clinical director said, I think you should just get certified. I guess I was bugging him too much.
All those questions.
Yeah. All those questions and reading every book he gave me. And so he goes, I think you guys just should get certified. And it's so funny because we were in the classes for our coaching, our help. I was always volunteering us for everything. And it got...
Need some volunteers up here. Volunteers.
Always, because I was just a student of the environment. So I always sat up front, dragging him all the way, and he didn't kick and scream as bad.
He knew he didn't have much of a choice.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it, Kodi, is that this is what I realized. And when we originally went to marriage coaching, I was like, you know what? Maybe I can find, and this was the original reason why I wanted to go. I was like, I've been telling her stuff and she ain't been listening. So I was like, maybe if we go to somebody else, they're going to tell her the same thing I've been telling her and she'll get it. So when we went,
Who got it? Who got it?
This is the realization I came to that, I was doing some stuff too, so that was kind of, a shock to me. So I'm like, okay, well, I can be doing some things better. And so in my approach to try to get her fixed, I realized that I need a little tweaking myself. So that's kind of
it's a two-way street.
It definitely is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the one thing that we've learned, like he said with that, the one thing that we've learned is that guys really resonate with guys. And so some of the things that our clinical director would say, he would literally come to me and say, hey, did you hear what he said? X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I've been telling you that for months. And he was like, no, I never heard you say that. Yeah. And it's the same way as we were coaching couples, the guys would really just get what Nik was saying. So that just made it a perfect fit, because I think a lot of times they don't really want to hear from us anymore.
Yeah.
And it's that obstacle, between communication too, because biologically we think differently. Men and women think differently. And that's one reason I was so excited to have both of you on, is because you both can contribute to that from your own marital experience and from a professional perspective on how to handle those communication obstacles that couples have, just by simply, men think with logic. They have to think, usually one at a time. And women are connected all over the place, and their minds bounce quite a bit. And so it's sometimes it takes a huge learning curve for a lot of young couples to figure out how to communicate together. And
Mhm.
so I was very interested in hearing how you guys traversed that, and then what advice you give to people when they encounter those issues.
Mm. You want to go first on this one?
Yeah, there's quite a few things we do. What we do as marriage coaches, we teach individuals tools.
Hmm.
So usually if they have an issue, we try to find the tool that will assist them. So if it's communication, we'll give a communication tool. If it's one of the marital discords, one of the main things that will stop a marriage, we give them that information. So we really lead with information so they can get the tools from us so they can learn, or anywhere. I mean, but most of the time we'll have a tool that'll help them and assist them in a process, because we're real big on tools and processes.
Yeah. If you go and you think about just coaching in general, if you align it to sports, a coach doesn't get in the game and play.
Hmm.
A coach prepares you for when you're in the game. So if you think about it that way, okay, you have practice, and kind of that practice that you have really lets you know what to do when the heat is on. So our thing is that we want to get you here, get you a particular skill set, so that when you're in the midst of that disagreement with your spouse, like, you know what? I remember what we practiced already, or I remember the skill that we can use. Because what happens is often when we go into a conflict with our spouses, no one goes to a fight thinking that they're going to lose. The goal is like, hey, I'm going in there and I know exactly what buttons I can push, to get him angry. I'm going to give him the knockout blow, and then I'm going to win. But ultimately, when you win a disagreement in your relationship, the marriage loses. And so the thing is that you really want to make sure that you're going in with goodwill, and that you really learn how to articulate your emotions, because typically the only emotion that we say is okay is anger. And you'd be like, no one really is like, oh, I got angry. But the thing about it is that we have to understand that anger is a secondary emotion.
Hmm.
So the thing is once you identify what that underlying issue is, that anger will subside. So if you feel like you're being taken for granted, or if you're feeling alone and isolated, and as a effect of that, you're going to be angry. So if you deal with that underlying issue, by default, that anger is going to subside. So we really want to make sure that individuals are able to articulate, put words with their emotions, and understand it's okay to be vulnerable. And that's another thing that we see that happens too many times in couples. They're afraid to say, you know what you did hurt me. And I've started, and Adinah gets this, if Adinah or even anybody else does something to me, and they care enough
I
about,
don't do anything to you.
yeah, she doesn't do anything.
She's perfect. What are you talking about?
Perfect. If they come to me and they're willing to, I guess for lack of a better term, humble themselves to care enough about my well-being to say, hey, you know what, if I did this, or if it hurt you, I apologize. And if they hurt me, I'll say, you know what, yeah, it hurt me. And I appreciate you caring enough for me to coming back and say that. Because when we start to discredit that, no, it didn't bother me. Well, if it didn't really bother you, guess what, they may do it again.
Yeah.
So you need to let them know, when you did that, it hurt me. And I appreciate you coming back. What can we do to avoid that from happening in the future? And that's really all about communication. You'll be amazed once you learn how to communicate with your spouse. Communication at the job will be easier. Yeah. Communication with your family members will be easier, because effective communication isn't something like a light switch that you want to cut on and cut off. You need to get that muscle memory. Once again, kind of goes back to coaching, where no matter what happens, that's going to be your default behavior. And until you do that enough, you get that muscle memory, you're going to fall back into those bad habits of yelling, screaming, and things like that. So our goal in being marriage coaches is that we get you to the point where without having to think about it, how to act in a particular situation that's going to be beneficial for your relationship.
Yeah, second nature.
Yeah. So what are some tools or tips that you would tell people when they're trying to discover that the anger is a symptom and not a cause? How would they determine the cause? How would they pick that out? How would you help people with that?
What we usually do, if we try to get them to identify where their arguments lie. So say, for instance, if we start arguing about the toothpaste being squeezed the wrong way, and then if it goes all the way back to every argument you have, it goes to your mom. It's like, well, your mom did this. Then we know that is an underlying issue. So we try to get them to understand, anytime they have a disagreement, where does where does the disrespect and the disconnect come in? So once we get them to help to identify those things, then that will give us a better opportunity to guide them to the right tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what oftentimes individuals will yell when they feel as though they're not heard. So, I mean, it's just as common as like, hey, if I'm upstairs and you're downstairs, I'm going to yell because I'm like, I can't hear you. So what happens is when you're communicating with your spouse, people start to yell because they don't feel like they're being heard. So if you find yourself yelling, ultimately what you need to do, if your spouse is yelling at you, you need to realize in your head, okay, they think I don't hear them.
Right.
Okay. So what do I need to do? First of all, I need to step back, because no matter what happens in a relationship, at times, someone has to be the champion in the relationship. There's times when Adinah is the champion, usually her. And then there's times when I am. And when I say champion, that means that, in that situation, someone has to be willing to say, you know what? I'm not going to add gas to this fire.
Right.
I'm going to step back. It's not a sign of weakness. No, because ultimately what happens, and me and Adinah has done this before, there's been times when the other person was kind of going off the rails and the other person chose to be the champion in that situation, that we would come back and say, you know what? I wasn't in a good space. I appreciate your willingness, to understand that and to be the calmer head in that situation. Yeah. So that's really what you want to do, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's all about, we used to say this when we were younger than we are now. And we partially can't say this because it's about getting old and gray together. And as you can see, I'm already at the gray part and I'm getting closer to old. But the thing is that you have to make those sacrifices today for your relationship in the future. Yeah. And that's really what it is.
And it's gotten to the place now where, and we try to teach couples to do this. I mean, as after over 20 years in, we teach individuals, because what I'll do a lot of times, if I feel myself getting hot, hungry, or something is happening, I try to stay in tune with my emotions and let Nik know ahead of time. Or he does the same thing. If he's had a rough day at work, he'll say, babe, I've had a rough one today. I just need a few minutes. And so we try to give each other that space and that opportunity to decompress. And we try to be proactive and tell each other earlier, before there's a blow up, before there's an issue, before there's a problem. So we can kind of fix that, get in the right headspace, and then be okay and be happy together. And, what I've learned as the mom, of small children, that it's so much easier to get myself together than it is for me to ruin the whole trip or ruin the whole, mood of the entire family, and then try to get 4 people in a better headspace.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And what you're talking about too, that's something I work with my clients on a lot, because a lot of times I'm working with just one member of the relationship. Usually it's the women in the relationship that are seeking out coaches or seeking out help. And like you say, it's somebody has to be the champion of that relationship. Someone has to focus on, okay, there's a problem. I don't know what it is, but I know I need help. And if I want to make this relationship last, I want to make it work, then I'm going to have to seek that outside help and be that person that does it. And sometimes they feel vulnerable, or they feel like it's a weakness for reaching out for help. And that goes away after you start working with them and you teach them that your vulnerability is actually your strength. That's where you're going to find those building blocks to actually start not only repairing your relationship, but building a stronger, solid foundation for your future. And being that self-awareness, or gaining that self-awareness, is where you're going to start. So you have to work on yourself first before you can start working on your marriage or anything else. And what you're talking about there, where you recognize your emotions, you recognize your feelings, you recognize if you're getting hangry, or if you're getting tired, or if you need to decompress from work, you already recognize those feelings. You can give your spouse a head up, and you guys are already, miles ahead of the game, versus if you didn't, your spouse comes in, has no idea, they're blindsided by a bad mood, and a fight escalates, and you really have no idea why there's a fight to begin with. And then those things fester. If you don't get them cleared, they fester, and they become bigger than what they should have been in the first place. So what you're saying is I love it. It's on par with everything that I coach on a lot of my clients as well. And it's nice to know that, you're aligning with other coaches sometimes when you hear how they present it. And I love your analogies, especially when you're speaking about, being a coach and on the playing field, because I know there's a bunch of guys right now that are going, oh, oh, that just clicked. You know, that light bulb just went off. And there's a bunch of women going, oh my God, we're back to football. But it works, you know, it resonates and it works. And that's what I love about it. And you guys, not only do you teach it, but I can tell by the way you guys are interacting right now that you live it, and it makes it so much easier to teach it by example than it does by just preaching. So props to you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think just kind of as we go into it, and one of the things I try to share with, the men that I come in contact with, that there's nothing wrong with a man being vulnerable. I mean,
I think vulnerability is your superpower, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's this line where, unfortunately, I think as a man, we want everything that comes with being, the head and the leader and all this other stuff. But we have to be the leader in all aspects. So that means in our relationship as well, not just like, it comes to be like, okay, these are my slippers and my pipe. And no, and all points. So it's nothing weak about being it, and oftentimes, we kind of have this bravado going on. But that's not really the case, because I'm very thankful that, I came to a realization that, you have to sometimes expose your heart to be completely loved, and we talk about it, you want to bond with someone, and two things that are required for bonding is physical closeness and emotional openness. And so, there are times we'll be physically close, but we don't have that emotional openness. We don't want to talk about our fears and, the things that we worry about as being providers and things for our household. So that's my biggest thing when I talk to men. I say, hey, you know what? It's okay to be open. It's not a sign of weakness. And it's just really not. And unfortunately, guys, I'm still a guy. I understand that we get ribbed and all kind of stuff, but.
Are you a guy?
I still am. I still am. I still am. Yes, ma'am. So when I say as a guy, you can still be a man's man and be emotionally open for your spouse and your children. It's nothing weak about that. And if you think I'm soft, try me.
Yeah. No, he's really good about that. And this guy, as we're counseling couples, he's really hard on guys. I think sometimes I thought I was hard on guys, but he's really hard on guys. And he has gotten to the place sometimes, when we've had couples and with the wives that are, getting ready to get married, because we do premarital counseling as well. He has really said, gotten some guys' faces, and I'm just like, he's like, if you're going to treat her wrong, leave her home with her parents. Leave her. He's like, really like, dude, you will have to see me. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah. And this is where, me being a man, I understand that sometimes we have to be very direct around certain things. And this is the way I view it. I'm fortunate enough, I have a daughter. And I know that whenever she decides to, get married, I don't want it to be any question, the individual that she marries, that they're ready to make the sacrifices that are necessary to be a husband. Right. And it just happens. And as we talk about marriage, we tell people that if marriage was called anything else, it would be called sacrifice. Yeah.
Right.
That's it. It's a ton of sacrificing that's going on, and if you find yourself in your relationship where you're not making any sacrifices, you got to take a hard look at what you're doing. Because at some point, someone has to make sacrifices in that relationship. And it's not about just for you, it's about us. And you really want to make sure that you're doing that.
But on that token too, people call it sacrifice because, you're with someone else, so you don't get your way all the time. It's not self-centeredness. It's not all about you. But what they don't look at is on the other side of that sacrifice, what you may have sacrificed over here seems huge, but what you gained by doing that makes this look trivial. Yeah. And people don't see the other side of that sacrifice sometimes until they try it. And then they see the what they get back, the receiving end from that other person that they care so much about. And those emotions and that gratitude that is returned to them is sometimes it catches people off guard, but it's also a huge turning point because it's not something they've really experienced before or they expected, because they're coming from a place of me, that self-centered mentality. When they get out of that and they go into something that's more of a giving mentality, it's suddenly not sacrifice anymore. It's a willingness to give to your spouse because you're going to get reciprocated with something back that is so much more than what you would have if you just clutched it close to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it is better to give than receive. And that's
Mm-hmm.
so important because you cannot receive anything with your arm, with your hand tightened up. You got to open it up so you can give and then receive.
Mm-hmm. That is very true. So switching gears a little bit on you, Adinah, when we first talked originally on our first phone call, you had mentioned something about you believe that marriage is in jeopardy. The institution of marriage in general is in jeopardy. So I know this is switching a hard gear. We're taking a right-hand turn here, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that, both of you, both of your thoughts on that, on why you believe the institution is struggling today.
I think so because, when individuals say they quote 50% of marriage is, you know, end in divorce, and they're really negative about that. Or when you hear guys say, oh, you're getting with the old ball and chain, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just been a very negative connotation with that.
Mhm.
So I think I see a lot more couples living together and having families and not necessarily getting into marriage. And even as a psychology professor for years, I would hear oftentimes marriage is just a piece of paper while you're in school getting another piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Counterintuitive, isn't it?
and I'm like, well, money's paper too.
Mm-hmm.
There's rights and responsibilities that come with getting married. That's why so many people are fighting. So many people have died for the right to get married. And so it's so important that we understand. So, yeah, I do think marriage is in jeopardy because of the negative around it. But I feel like if individuals build that strong foundation and they really put the work into it. I mean, if you think about it, on your job, we're trained constantly at our job.
Mm-hmm.
Why not get trained constantly on your spouse, the thing that's most important, on your children? I mean, even though I've been, a psychology professor for 17, 18 years, and I was a youth counselor prior to that, I still read books on marriage. I still read books on, how to connect better with my kids, because I think the educational piece is so important that we learn that there's always a different way to do this. And if it's not working, I mean, continuing to do the same thing over and over, it's just insanity. So if it's not working, let's regroup, let's do something different, and let's get a different training about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, where we are right now is that we are now in a state where there have been individuals who are the products of divorce,
Yeah.
and they've seen it all around them, and
Mm-hmm.
so oftentimes it's not really viewed as taboo to get a divorce. Like, yeah, I got divorced, I tried that, but I think ultimately what we really have to be mindful of is that, as Adinah said, okay, well, 50% of marriages end in divorce.
50% are together still too,
Yeah, well,
though.
50% still together. I'm like, I know people out here playing lottery and the odds are a whole lot worse than that. So I'm gonna
Yep.
go ahead and I'm gonna try it, and we really have to understand that, it's not going to be easy. I think that unfortunately now, the society that we have, we kind of want things to be perfect at the beginning. Nobody wants to work for anything. It's almost like when individuals first get married, they want to get the house that they just left from with their parents. Like, okay, well, yeah, your parents might have a
Mm-hmm.
2-story home, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2-car garage. But guess what? That was after years and years
Yeah.
of them working
Mm-hmm.
and saving. Okay, so you got to
And
crawl before you walk.
sacrificing, yeah.
So you got to understand that there are going to be bumps in the road, in your relationship. And I think that's what people miss. Like, I don't want to be unhappy. Well, you know what? Sometimes, things worth having, you have to work for.
Mhm.
I think
Yep.
sometimes we really miss that. It's not that instant gratification. It's that work. But if you look at it in totality, we started off rough. But the good thing about marriage and really working toward it, it gets easier over time.
Yeah.
And if you just
Mm-hmm.
put in that work, it just gets easier.
And if
Yep.
you build that strong foundation, you build that strong foundation,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, it does take work, and it is important for you to do that.
Yep. I agree. And my husband says the same thing that you just said, Nick, about when you look at what your parents have and you want to just inherit something. You don't want to work for it. You
Mhm.
want to just go ahead and inherit it because it's already there. So why not? That's the easy way out. And my husband constantly goes, I don't understand that mentality because I want to build something for myself. I want to build my own life. I want to work for myself. And that mentality goes into everything that he does. it doesn't just stop with materialistic things or building a life. You know, it's every bit of what he puts out into the world. He's constantly putting out his best because he wants to work for it, and he takes pride in that. And I think that makes a big difference on how you approach things as far as relationships with other people too, because you understand things take work, things of value, things that mean the most in your life take work. And so you accept that and you're just willing to put it in. You don't think of the other option of escape. That's not even there in your mind. So strictly you have this tunnel vision of, okay, I'm going to work for it, and I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it happen because this is what I want out of my life. And I think it's really how you set your goals and how you plan your life and what you want most out of your life. And it depends on where your standards are on things. And I think some people just need to learn that they can set those standards, that they do have the freedom and the ability to set the standards wherever they want. It's not a limitation. And that's a whole mental shift that we can get into on another day. But
Yeah, because we hear a lot of people saying, well, because my parents divorced, we're just going to divorce. When we got married, all of our siblings had been divorced. And it's like all of my mom's siblings had been divorced. So it was a matter of, and I had to just pray about it and say, what is going to make this different? What is going to be the piece that's going to solidify our relationship and build that foundation that we need? And we found that getting trained on marriage and relationship was what it took.
Yep.
Yeah. Kodi, and to piggyback on what you were saying in regards to, you know, the viewpoints that, you know, your husband has, whenever we're faced with anything difficult, one of the biggest things we'll say is that if it was easy, everybody would do it. And so no matter what it is, we're in a situation, our relationship, I mean, if it's something in our business, you know, if it's like, oh, this is such a headache, we're like, no, it feels easy. Everybody be doing it. You know, so that's just really the mentality that we try to have, you know, in our relationship and just in life in general.
Yep. And I think that is a relation or a mentality that everyone should stand on, I think. But fortunately, everyone doesn't. Otherwise, you know, everyone would be doing all the hard stuff, and then that hard stuff would be easy, and we'd have even harder standards. So
Yeah, there you go.
But I want to thank you, Nik and Adinah. I know we've been on here for, I don't know, close to an hour now. And I have felt like it was only 5 minutes, and it has been absolutely wonderful talking to both of you. And I want to thank you for coming on to the show and really exploring a lot of those mindsets with you. So before we close, is there anything else that you guys want to add or you want to touch upon?
Well, we do have our YouTube channel, Nik and Adinah, on YouTube. And all the coaching that we have is right there. And that's so important. You know, people reach out to us, and we even take requests if individuals have certain questions. We always feel like, well, other people may have that question too. And so we'll do a video. I know our taping this week, we did a couple questions, and it worked out really nice because, and I think it's so important because individuals get to hear what Nik has to say about it. Whereas a lot of times, you know, we just want to hear a guy's perspective.
Yeah. And I think that kind of with that, we have several playlists that we've tried to dedicate to really have, like, you know, topical situations. Like we have Love and Respect series that we've been doing there. We have communication series. Actually, one of our most popular playlists has been on forgiveness. So that's one that a lot of people.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So we do that. And also in that, we have had a lot of situations that we speak to. And often, as Adinah kind of shows, the book that she wrote, and that's Butterfly Blue.
The Pain of Infertility and the Power of Forgiveness. That's on Amazon. But I think forgiveness, it's so crazy, Kodi, because so often for us, I wish we could be these, you know, marriage coaches that can just teach something we've never had to go through. But unfortunately, even writing about it, you know, I had to go through the process of forgiveness, and that was major for me. And so, and that is a process. So we do have quite a few playlists on different things, and you know, we share freely some of the things that we have had to overcome as well.
Yeah, we're just really thankful that as we decided to expand our family, we were fortunate that we had really laid a foundation in our relationship to deal with the infertility struggles that we had. Oftentimes, infertility is a source of contention that can break up marriages. And I mean, you really go to the point where you really live from month to month. You live for that one little window, like, okay, well, these are the days, you know, and you go and you hope, and it doesn't work out. And it's real easy to start pointing fingers at people and things like that. So we're really thankful that we had gotten to the point where we had built up enough goodwill and had enough skills that as we went through that situation, we didn't turn on each other. Because far too often, it really becomes frustrating and gets to the point where, some marriages don't weather that storm. Yeah. And we're just really thankful that we're able to do that. So Adinah documented our journey there in her book, Butterfly Blue. So it talks about forgiveness, but also it talks about some of the struggles that we had with infertility. Yeah.
And Butterfly Blue, you said, is on Amazon. You guys have a YouTube channel called Nik and Adinah, and it's N-I-K, not N-I-C-K, N-I-K, and Adinah, A-D-I-N-A-H, on YouTube. And everything that you're going to need to find these guys, especially if you want to work with them, is going to be down in the show notes below this video. So be sure to click on it, go subscribe to their YouTube channel. I promise you will not be disappointed at all. And check out Butterfly Blue on Amazon, because I know so many people, so many women especially, are going to benefit from reading that book and knowing that they're not alone in some of those struggles. So thank you for being vulnerable and for putting that out there for people to see and experience with you.
Thank you, Kodi.
Well, thank you guys for being on the show, and I can't wait to have you on again in the near future. And in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for joining So You Say You're Married.